The forests of Tanith are burning. Ibram Gaunt stands at the viewport of an Imperial Guard transport, watching his homeworld die. The nullwood trees, ancient and irreplaceable, are being consumed by orbital bombardment from a chaos fleet that appeared from the warp without warning. You can smell it even through the transport's recycled air. Nullwood smoke has a sweet, sick quality, like burning sugar mixed with copper. It is the smell of a world dying. Sir, we have 17 minutes before the enemy completes their bombardment pattern. The aide's voice is tight, professional, cracking only at the edges. After that, anyone still on the surface. I know what happens after that, Lieutenant. Gaunt's voice is flat. Emotion is a luxury that gets people killed. Status on the evacuation? Troop ships are loading now. 3 regiments stationed planetside, but only the 1st is close enough to the landing zones. The 2nd and 3rd won't make it in time. 2,000 men, maybe more. Left behind because the geometry of orbital mechanics and enemy fire patterns doesn't care about human life. Gaunt was born on Tanith. Raised in the Scala Progenium after his father, a commissar, died in service to the Emperor. Trained to believe that duty transcends everything. Family, home, even survival. When he returned to Tanith as a commissar himself, he thought he had come home. He was wrong. There is no home in the Imperium. There is only duty. Load the ships, he says quietly. Abandon all equipment that slows us down. Take only the men. We lift off in 15 minutes whether loading is complete or not. The evacuation is controlled chaos. 3,000 Tanith, moving with the discipline of trained soldiers and the desperation of men watching their families burn. Many of them have wives, children, parents down there in the cities being reduced to molten slag. Gaunt can see it in their faces as they board. The numb shock. The hollow eyes. This is what it means to serve in the Imperial Guard. When your world burns, you evacuate and fight elsewhere, because the Imperium is eternal, and no single planet matters, no single life, no single heartbreaking, as it watches home disappear forever. Gaunt is the last man up the ramp. Behind him, Tanith burns. The Nullwood forests, kilometers of silver-barked trees, are a horizon-spanning inferno. The cities are craters. The orbital defense platforms drift as silent wreckage. The Chaos Fleet will land troops, corrupt what remains, plant their obscene banners in the ashes. There will be no counterattack, no liberation, no justice. The transport shudders as it breaks atmosphere, joining the ragged fleet fleeing into orbit. Ahead lies the Sabbat Worlds Crusade, a grinding war of reconquest across an entire sector. The Tanith First was supposed to arrive as a proud regiment from a living world, 3,000 strong, equipped and ready. Instead, they arrive as refugees, the orphaned sons of a world that no longer exists. In the cargo hold during the warp transit to the Sabbat Worlds, Gaunt gathers the surviving officers. 11 men, 11 faces, showing different stages of grief and rage and numbness. Major Ron leans against a support stanchion, arms crossed. His expression isn't grief. It is contempt. Captain Corbeck, big and loud, and now silent as a grave. Sergeant McColl, the scoutmaster, standing so still he is almost invisible even in plain sight. Gentlemen, Gaunt begins. His voice echoes in the metal space. The Tanith First-and-Only will not be a regiment of mourners. First and only. Ron's voice cuts like a lasbolt. That is what they are calling us already. The last regiment of a dead world. And you want us to be proud of that. Gaunt meets his eyes. I want us to make that name feared. Feared? Ron pushes off the stanchion. We are 3,000 refugees, with whatever gear we could carry. Half these men lost families down there. You think we can compete with guard regiments that actually have support, supply lines, reinforcements? We don't compete, Major. We excel. Gaunt's tone is ice. We were trained as scouts, as woodsmen, as light infantry. Tanith taught us to move through impossible terrain, to strike from shadows, to disappear like ghosts. That is what we will become. Ghosts, Ron spits the word. Appropriate. We are already dead men. Then we will haunt this war until the enemy wishes they had never heard our name. Gaunt looks at each man in turn. Every victory we claim is written in Tanith's name. Every enemy we kill is payment for what they took from us. Corbeck speaks, his voice rough. Sir, half these men lost families down there. How do we? By giving their loss meaning, Captain. Gaunt's tone softens, but only slightly. We fight, we win. We make the enemy regret they ever came to the Sabbat Worlds. We become the finest light infantry regiment in the Imperial Guard, and every victory we claim is written in Tanith's name. Silence. Then McCall, quiet as always. When do we start, sir? We started the moment Tanith burned. Gaunt straightens. Now we prove we survived for a reason. The Sabbat Worlds Crusade is an abattoir that devours regiments whole. Dozens of fighting forces, hundreds of thousands of men, thrown against chaos-held worlds in a grinding war of attrition that measures progress in corpses per kilometer. The Tanith First arrives as an unknown quantity, refugees from a destroyed world with no reputation, no glory, no proven record. Other regiments don't just pity them. They despise them. The woodsman, Colonel Flentz of the Jantine Patricians, uses the term like a curse during a command briefing. The Jantine are aristocratic guard, officers from noble bloodlines, soldiers who see military service as the province of the well-born. I am told we are meant to coordinate with these forest primitives. How long until they break and run back to whatever stump they crawled out from? The Jantine officers laugh. Gaunt, standing at the back of the briefing chamber, says nothing. His hand rests on the hilt of his power sword, not a threat. Just a reminder that commissars have authority over colonels, regardless of bloodline. Words are cheap. Bodies stacked in the right places are expensive. Their first major deployment is Blackshard, a mining world held by chaos cultists. The briefing is terse. Infiltrate enemy-held territory. Locate their command bunker. Mark it for orbital strike. Standard reconnaissance. High casualties expected. The other regiments consider it a suicide mission, which is why it is given to the ghosts. McCall assembles his scout teams in the dim light of the dropship. 20 men, faces painted with ash, wearing the distinctive camo cloaks that mark them as Tanith-born. The cloaks are patterned in a way that makes them nearly invisible in any terrain, a weaving technique from the Knollwood forests, a secret of their dead world. 30 kilometers through enemy territory, McCall says quietly. His voice never rises above conversation, never needs to. 7,000 cultists between us and the target. Hardened bunker complex. We mark it. We extract before the orbital strike. Move fast. Stay invisible. Trust your training. Trooper Bragg, massive and broad-shouldered, shifts his autocannon. Can't be harder than Tanith forests at night, Sarge. A few manage grim smiles. They remember those forests. Remember what is gone. Gaunt watches from the observation deck as his scouts disappear into the Blackshard wastes. 48 hours until extraction. No communication until they reach the target. Either they succeed, or they die in silence and the mission is scrubbed. 46 hours later, Orbital Command receives the signal. Target marked. Strike authorized. The bunker complex evaporates in a pillar of superheated plasma. The enemy command structure decapitates. The Blackshard offensive, stalled for 6 weeks, surges forward, and 20 Tanith scouts emerge from the wasteland, exhausted, wounded, triumphant. The Jantine patrician officer watches the orbital strike from the command deck and says nothing, but his contempt has turned to something else. Respect, maybe, or fear. Gaunt begins to understand what his regiment can become. The first year of the Sabbat Worlds Crusade establishes their reputation. Small victories at first, then larger. Blackshard is followed by Fortis Binary, where the ghosts defend hive manufactories against chaos armor columns. They use the industrial infrastructure itself as a weapon, luring tanks into kill zones, collapsing structures, turning the enemy's strength into liability. By the second year, other regiments stop calling them the Woodsmen and start requesting them for specialist operations. By the third year, Gaunt has memorized 400 names of the dead. In the fourth year of the crusade, they are deployed to Menazoid Epsilon. The briefing from General Ortiz is grim. Menazoid Epsilon is a toxic swamp world. The water will blister your skin on contact. The air is barely breathable even with filters. The enemy is the Suppletion 9th, Traitor Guard, who have been entrenched there for 8 months. They know every poisoned meter of that hellhole. Our objective, sir? Gaunt asks. There is an artillery position hidden somewhere in the swamps. Has been shelling our advance for 2 weeks. 3 regiments have tried to locate it. All failed. We are giving you 72 hours to find it and destroy it, or we scrub the offensive. Gaunt accepts the mission without hesitation. 3 days later, Corbeck sits in the command tent, staring at the after-action report. McColl's team infiltrated 40 kilometers into enemy-held swamp, located the artillery position by tracking supply boat movements along poisoned waterways, and destroyed it with precisely placed demolition charges. Casualties: 12 men dead from toxic exposure, 8 wounded. Results: enemy artillery silenced. Imperial advance resumes. How? Corbeck asks McCall when the scoutmaster returns, covered in chemical burns and swamp filth. McCall shrugs. They were looking for an army. We gave them ghosts. It becomes their pattern. The impossible missions, the insertions into enemy territory, the strikes that should fail but do not. Gaunt asks everything of his men, but he never asks them to do anything he would not do himself. Unlike most commissars who lead from the rear with bolt pistols ready to execute stragglers, Gaunt fights at the front. He carries his weapons, a bolt pistol and a power sword, an antique blade that hums with lethal energy, and uses them. Often. On Voltis, during a mountain assault in sub-zero temperatures, Gaunt personally leads the breach of an enemy strongpoint when the initial assault stalls. He is 43 years old, running up an ice-covered slope in armor, trading fire with traitors who have the high ground and all the advantages. Trooper Caffran, barely 20, watches the Colonel Commissar charge up that slope and thinks, if he can do it, so can I. That is the difference. That is what makes the ghosts follow him into situations that would make other regiments mutiny. They trust him, absolutely, completely. Because they have seen him bleed, they have seen him carry wounded men on his back when ammunition ran low and extraction was still kilometers away. They have heard him speak the names of the fallen in the post-battle silence, never forgetting a single one. In the Imperium, soldiers are numbers, resources. Ammunition that walks and talks and dies when ordered. To Gaunt, they are people. It is a dangerous philosophy. It should get him executed for being too soft, too sentimental. But the results speak louder than ideology. The Ghosts' casualty rates are lower than comparable units. Their success rate is extraordinary. They are not the biggest regiment or the best equipped, but they are precise, disciplined, and ruthlessly effective. The High Command tolerates Gaunt's eccentricities because he delivers victories. 7 years into the Sabbat Worlds Crusade, the real test comes. Phantine. The mission that will either prove the ghosts are as good as their reputation suggests, or kill them all. Phantine is a world unlike any other in the Sabbat Worlds. The planet's surface is a toxic hell, unbreathable and lethal. But in the upper atmosphere, vast hive cities float on anti-gravity platforms powered by archaeotech from the dark age of technology. The entire war is fought in the air. Skyborne fortresses, aerial dogfights, battles on platforms suspended kilometers above certain death. And the Imperial Guard is expected to assault those fortresses with infantry. The briefing is straightforward. We need Skyborne Fortress P4 captured intact. It controls the aerial approaches to 3 hive cities, currently held by approximately 800 traitor militia and a full company of Chaos Space Marines. Your regiment will execute a boarding assault via air transport, capture the fortress, and hold until reinforcements arrive. Gaunt studies the tactical displays. The fortress is a floating weapon platform, bristling with anti-aircraft batteries, suspended 4 kilometers above the toxic surface. The enemy expects attacks from other aircraft. They do not expect ground troops. It is suicidal, Ron says flatly when Gaunt outlines the plan. It is unexpected, Gaunt corrects, which is why it will work. The assault begins at dawn. 30 transport aircraft, each carrying a platoon of ghosts, racing toward the fortress at maximum speed through air so thin your lungs burn, even with the respirators. The anti-aircraft fire is murderous. Tracer rounds draw geometric patterns of death across the pale sky. 3 transports are hit in the first 2 minutes. The Vox fills with screaming that cuts to static as they spiral down into the toxic clouds 4 kilometers below. Gaunt is on the lead transport. Standing at the open boarding ramp, wind screaming past at 300 kilometers per hour, watching the fortress grow larger. The structure is massive, a floating weapons platform the size of a hive spire, bristling with gun batteries, suspended in defiance of all reason. 30 seconds, the pilot shouts over the engine roar. Gaunt checks his bolt pistol. Full magazine, his power sword hums at his hip, eager. Around him, the ghosts are silent. No battle cries, no prayers, just professional soldiers preparing to do something that should be impossible. 20 seconds, flak incoming. The transport bucks as explosions bracket them. Something hits the port engine. Alarms shriek. The pilot fights the controls, keeps them level through sheer will. 10 seconds! The ramp slams against the fortress hull before it is fully secured. Metal screams against metal. Loss fire cuts through the opening, bright lines of superheated light that vaporize the air itself. Trooper Larkin, the regiment's best marksman, is first through. His long loss barks twice before his boots touch deck. 2 enemy sentries drop, with smoking holes through their chests. Gaunt follows, bolt pistol roaring, and behind him the rest of the platoon pours through like water breaking a dam. The fighting is brutal. Close quarters, no room for maneuver, every corridor a killing ground. The ghosts move room by room, clearing with grenade and bayonet and point-blank fire. The fortress interior is a maze of catwalks over yawning voids, compartments where one misstep means falling to your death, bulkheads that can be sealed to trap entire squads. The enemy does not break. They are traitor militia, yes, but they are also veterans who have held this fortress for 8 months. They know every access corridor, every defensible position, every place to set an ambush, and make the ghosts pay for every meter in blood and the brutal finality of close-quarters death. Corbeck's voice thunders over the Vox, somehow audible even through the chaos. "Second platoon, you are flanked left! Third, cover that approach or we are all dead." He is everywhere at once, plugging gaps in the line, dragging wounded men to cover, his bulk somehow fitting through corridors built for smaller men. McColl's scouts slip through ventilation shafts and attack from unexpected angles. They appear behind enemy positions like malevolent spirits, knives doing their work in silence before disappearing back into the ducts. By hour 3, the ghosts have lost 90 men, a third of their initial strength. The fortress corridors are slick with blood. The air tastes like copper and burned meat. But they have secured the main hangar, the control center, the ammunition stores. Gaunt stands in the fortress command center, blood on his coat from when he had held a dying trooper, Marin, he remembers, age 19, from the southern Tanith hinterlands. His power sword is dark with gore. Through the viewport, he can see the follow-up waves arriving, reinforcements from other regiments, coming to hold what the ghosts have purchased with their lives. "Sir," Corbeck reports, breathing hard. His face is gray with exhaustion. Fortress is secure. Casualty count is 94 dead, 38 wounded, serious enough for evac. But we hold it. 94 names to memorize. 94 families that will never exist. 94 futures erased so the Imperium could claim this floating fortress. But the fortress stands. The mission succeeds. The Sabbat Worlds Crusade advances. "Get me the casualty lists," Gaunt says quietly. "All of them. I want to know every name." "Sir, there are 90. "I know how many there are, Captain." Gaunt's voice is tired. "I need to know their names." The Phantine campaign makes the Ghosts legendary. Other regiments start requesting them for special operations. The High Command offers Gaunt promotions, reassignments, commendations. He refuses everything. "I am not leaving my men, sir," he tells the general, who offers him a colonelcy in a more prestigious regiment. "They are my responsibility." "They are just soldiers, Gaunt." "No, sir, they are Tanith. They are the last of their world, and I am staying with them until the war ends, or I die." The general stares at him like he is insane. Maybe he is. But the Ghosts follow him because of it, because he refuses to abandon them, because he has chosen to bind his fate to theirs completely. 4 more years pass, 11 years into the Sabbat Worlds Crusade, and the war shows no sign of ending. The Ghosts grind through campaign after campaign, planet after planet, battle after battle. They take casualties and absorb recruits from liberated worlds. The regiment transforms from a purely Tanith force into something more diverse, but the core identity remains. New men learn to wear the camo cloaks. They learn to move like ghosts. They learn the Tanith rites for honoring the dead. And they learn to follow Gaunt. His hair grays. Scars accumulate. The names he carries number in the hundreds now, then the thousands. Every face remembered in the quiet moments between battles. There are nights when he lies awake, thinking of Tanith burning, wondering if he could have done something different, knowing he could not have. The Imperium does not forgive failure, and retreat was the only option. But logic does not ease the guilt. Then, in the 15th year of the Crusade, comes Gereon. The briefing is classified beyond top secret. Only Gaunt and a handful of senior officers are allowed to hear it. An inquisitor delivers the details in a sealed room, his voice cold and precise. A man whose eyes have seen things that would break most minds. Gereon has been occupied by Chaos forces for 19 months. The planet is a staging ground for enemy operations across 3 subsectors. We need intelligence on their command structure, their logistical networks, their strategic plans. This requires a long-term insertion, months, possibly years, deep behind enemy lines. "You are asking for volunteers," Gaunt says. "It is not a question." "I am ordering your regiment to provide them." The Inquisitor's expression does not change. "Select your best men, 20, no more. They will infiltrate Gereon, establish a resistance network, gather intelligence, and sabotage enemy operations until extraction becomes possible. Survival rate is estimated at less than 10%. The room is silent. Corbec shifts his weight. Ron's jaw tightens. McCall, as always, is utterly still. "I will lead the insertion personally," Gaunt says. "That is not." "Those are my terms, Inquisitor. I do not send my men into hell alone." Gaunt selects his team carefully. McCall, because if anyone can survive behind enemy lines, it is him. Ron, because his ruthlessness will be an asset. Larkin for his marksmanship. Cried for her tenacity. A dozen others, the best of the Ghosts. Men and women he knows will do what needs doing, even when what needs doing crosses lines that should not be crossed. The insertion is a high-altitude drop into contested territory. They scatter on landing, regroup in the ruins of a bombed-out city, and begin the long, grinding work of survival in enemy territory. Gereon is a nightmare made real. The Chaos occupation has transformed the world into a place where reality itself feels wrong. The sky is the wrong color, a sickly yellow-green that never changes, never darkens to true night. Buildings lean at impossible angles, their geometry offensive to human eyes. The air tastes like copper and decay. The civilians who remain are either corrupted or broken, hollow-eyed, and moving like automatons through streets that smell of burning plastic and rotting meat. The Ghosts hide in ruins during the day, move at night through a city that should not exist under any sane laws of physics. They scavenge for food and ammunition from corpses and abandoned military depots. They sabotage supply convoys, assassinate enemy officers, gather intelligence painstakingly from intercepted communications and tortured prisoners. Every day is a gamble. Every noise could be discovery. Every patrol could be their last. The first month, they lose Khafren. Sniper round through the chest during a supply raid. He bleeds out in McColl's arms in a basement that reeks of mold and corruption, trying to say something about his girl back on Tanith before he remembers Tanith does not exist anymore. The second month, Varl disappears during a reconnaissance mission. Never found. They search for 3 days before abandoning the effort. You cannot risk 12 lives for one, even when that one is your friend. The fourth month, Broston, the flamer specialist, burns to death when his weapon malfunctions during an ambush. The screaming goes on for 7 seconds. It feels like hours. What was supposed to be a 3-month operation becomes 6 months, then 9, then a year. Gaunt keeps them moving, keeps them focused, keeps them human. But it is getting harder. They are running out of ammunition, supplementing Imperial loss packs with scavenged chaos weaponry that feels wrong in their hands. Running out of hope. Starting to act less like soldiers and more like cornered animals doing whatever it takes to survive one more day. Gaunt makes compromises he would have executed other officers for making, uses chaos supply lines knowing it supports the enemy war effort elsewhere, allows his men to loot the dead, even when the dead are Imperial citizens caught in the crossfire, turns informants by threatening their families, people who are victims themselves but might be useful. Every compromise is necessary. Every compromise is corrosive. They are 12 months into the insertion when Gaunt is captured. It happens during a raid on an enemy communications facility. The intelligence is too good, the opportunity too perfect. Which should have been his warning. A patrol appears from an unexpected direction, not just cultists, but actual Chaos Space Marines of the Blood Pact. Enhanced warriors in power armor who move faster than humans should be able to move. The team scatters. McColl and Ron make it out. Gaunt does not. The interrogation lasts 6 days. They do not want just tactical information, they want him broken. Want to parade him as a trophy, the commissar who led his men into hell and failed. The interrogator is an artist of pain. A former Medicae who knows exactly where to cut, where to burn, where to apply pressure to maximize suffering without causing death or unconsciousness. Day 1. They start with his hands, the power sword hand first, methodical, asking questions about troop movements he does not know the answers to even if he wanted to talk. Day 2. Moving to more creative methods. Things involving needles and nerve clusters, asking about the insertion's true purpose, about Inquisition involvement, about whether there are other teams. Gaunt gives them nothing, not because he is heroic, but because if he breaks, his men die. The entire mission collapses. 14 people are still out there depending on his silence. Day 3, they bring in a psyker. A corrupted mind reader who tries to claw the information directly from Gaunt's thoughts. The psychic invasion feels like insects burrowing through his brain. He focuses on Tanith burning, fills his mind with Nalwood smoke and screaming and the smell of his homeworld dying. The psyker recoils, nose bleeding. His mind is full of ashes. Day 4. Back to physical methods. They are getting frustrated now. Breaking a man this defiant should be easier. Day 5. Gaunt loses track of time. Everything is pain. He is fairly certain they have broken several ribs. One eye is swollen shut. He can taste blood constantly. There are moments when he considers giving them something, anything, just to make it stop. But he thinks of Khafren dying in that basement. Of Varl lost somewhere in this hellscape, of Broston burning. He will not dishonor them by breaking here. Day 6. The rescue. McColl and Ron assault the prison facility with the remaining 12 ghosts. 14, exhausted, half-starved soldiers attacking a fortified enemy position held by 200 cultists. They win because they fight like ghosts, striking from shadows, disappearing before the enemy can respond, using every dirty trick Tanith ever taught them. because they are not just rescuing their commanding officer. They are rescuing the man who refused to leave them behind when Tanith burned. They extract Gaunt barely alive, emaciated, covered in burns and cuts, one eye swollen shut, 3 broken ribs, both hands damaged, but alive. "Sorry we are late, sir," McColl says as they carry him through the ruins. His voice is perfectly calm, as if this is routine. Gaunt tries to laugh. It comes out as a cough that brings up blood. They hide in the ruins for another 2 weeks, while Gaunt recovers enough to move. The pain is extraordinary. Every breath feels like broken glass, but slowly, painfully, he heals. Enough to walk, enough to fight if he has to. 3 months later, Imperial forces finally liberate Gereon. The offensive succeeds partly because of the intelligence the Ghosts gathered. Enemy command structure, logistics networks, strategic weaknesses exploited ruthlessly. The Ghosts emerge from hiding into an Imperial-held zone. 14 survivors out of the original 20, plus Gaunt. They look like hollow-eyed ghosts themselves, walking skeletons in rotted uniforms. Some of them have not spoken in days, retreating into silence as a defense against what they have seen and done. The intelligence they provided is instrumental in the liberation. The sabotage they conducted crippled enemy logistics for an entire subsector. By every military metric, the mission is a stunning success. The debriefing takes 3 days. Then the Inquisition arrives. Inquisitor Haldane. Not the one who sent them in. A different one, harder, more suspicious. He looks at the Gereon survivors like they are specimens in a laboratory, potentially contaminated, possibly heretical. 18 months behind enemy lines on a chaos-occupied world. Haldane's voice is cold. Extensive contact with corrupted populations. Use of chaos weapons and equipment. Living in structures tainted by the warp. You expect me to believe none of you were touched? We fought the enemy every day, Gaunt says. His hands shake slightly. After effect of the torture. He keeps them clasped behind his back. We bled for the Emperor. We gave everything. Yes, everything, including, perhaps, your souls. The investigation lasts 2 months. The Ghosts are confined to barracks, guarded, forbidden from contact with other Imperial forces. They are interrogated individually, repeatedly, by Inquisitors and sanctioned psychers who probe their minds for taint. 4 Ghosts are executed, not because evidence of corruption is found, but because the psychers sense anomalies. Trooper Fagor, who had survived 13 months on Gereon, is shot in the head because he flinched the wrong way during a psychic scan. Trooper Lice is burned alive for suspicious dreams. Gaunt fights for his remaining men, argues with Inquisitors who have the legal authority to condemn him with a word. Threatens to appeal to War Master Command. Reminds them that these soldiers accomplished a mission the Inquisition itself ordered, and now the Inquisition wants to execute them for succeeding. They are loyal, he insists during a particularly heated confrontation. They bled for the Emperor. They gave 18 months of their lives in hell. They watched their brothers die. And you would kill them for the crime of survival? The crime is potential corruption, Colonel Commissar. Haldane's expression does not change. Better to burn 10 innocent men than let one corrupted soul spread taint to a regiment. These men are not tainted. They are traumatized. There is a difference. Is there? Perhaps you are too close to see clearly. The implied threat is obvious. Gaunt himself is under suspicion. His torture, his captivity, the compromises made during the insertion, all of it could be evidence of corruption. The Inquisition could declare him and his entire regiment heretical and have them all purged. Eventually, grudgingly, the Inquisition clears the survivors, not because they are convinced of the Ghosts' purity, but because War Master Makaroth himself intervenes. The Ghosts are too valuable, too effective. The Crusade needs them. But the scars remain, not all of them are visible. The survivors do not speak about Gereon, not to each other, not to the regiment. There is an understanding among those who are there. Some things cannot be shared, cannot be explained to people who were not in that hell. Ron, who had hated Gaunt for years, becomes quietly loyal after Gereon. Not friendly, never friendly, but loyal. because Gaunt had taken 6 days of torture rather than give them up. McCall, already taciturn, becomes even more silent. He still does his job perfectly, moves like a ghost, never fails a mission. But something behind his eyes has changed, hardened. Gaunt himself struggles with nightmares for months. He wakes up tasting blood, feeling the interrogator's tools. During daylight he is functional, professional, the colonel-commissar his men need. At night he is back in that cell, counting the hours until they come for him again. For a time he questions whether he is still fit to lead, whether the things he did to survive, the compromises he made, have corrupted him in ways the Inquisition's psychers could not detect. But the ghosts need him. The war continues, and there is no one else who will remember all their names. The Sabbat Worlds Crusade was named for Saint Sabbat from its inception. War Master Slato himself prosecuted the war in her name, invoking the ancient warrior saint who had reclaimed these worlds from heresy during the Age of Apostasy. Her legend permeates every aspect of the crusade. Every regimental banner bears her icon. Every victory is claimed in her name. Every soldier knows they fight to reclaim the Sabbat Worlds, the territory she liberated and sanctified with her blood millennia ago. But as the crusade grinds into its second decade, as the casualties mount and the progress slows, Gaunt begins to wonder if her legend alone is enough. The soldiers need more than stories. They need a symbol they can see, touch, believe in, with their hands as well as their hearts. The quest begins not suddenly, but gradually, with fragments and whispers gathered across years of campaigning. An ancient chronicle discovered in a liberated shrine on Hagia. A deathbed confession from a dying priest on Fortis Binary. References to Saint Sabbat's final resting place, her actual physical remains, lost somewhere in the Crusade zone during the chaos of the Age of Apostasy. If the Crusade could find her tomb, recover her relics, it would be more than a military victory. It would be a spiritual triumph, proof that the Emperor's will guides them. The soldiers would fight harder. The faithful would believe more deeply. The very presence of her sacred remains might turn battles through sheer inspiration. Gaunt becomes quietly obsessed. Not officially. The High Command dismisses it as religious fantasy better left to the ecclesiarchy. But between campaigns, during transit, in stolen moments, he researches. Following fragmentary, leads through ancient texts, speaking with priests and historians who guard pieces of the puzzle like jealous dragons. Tracing references across multiple worlds, building a picture one painful piece at a time. On Nemea, in the foundation stone of a chapel that predates imperial records, they find her icon carved with a precision that suggests divine guidance. The stone is warm to the touch, impossibly warm after millennia buried, as if the saint's presence still lingers in the rock itself. The priest guarding it weeps when Gaunt traces the carving with his fingers. The ghosts follow him because they always have, even though many think the quest is impossible. They trust Gaunt's judgment. If he believes this matters, it matters. Years into the search, campaign after campaign, world after world, they find fragments, a map etched into a chapel wall on Nemea, a piece of her armor preserved in a reliquary on Enothus, oral traditions maintained by isolated monastic communities who have preserved the knowledge across millennia. Each piece adds to the puzzle. Then comes Herodor, a shrine world heavily defended by the enemy, its surface covered in pilgrimage sites and temples. During the planetary assault, Gaunt's forces uncover something extraordinary in the ruins of the Doctrinopolis. Ancient records suggesting Saint Sabbat's actual tomb lies somewhere on this world, hidden and protected during the heretical occupation centuries ago. But the discovery is complicated by something else, the Beati, a woman who appears on Herodor during the battle, seemingly innocent but carrying an aura of divine presence. Some claim she is Saint Sabbat reborn. Others say she is possessed, corrupted, a trick of chaos. The Inquisition becomes involved, paranoid and suspicious. Gaunt finds himself caught between faith and reason, between the quest for historical relics and the possibility of something more miraculous and dangerous. The Beati is real. He has seen her, spoken with her. But what she represents, whether she is blessed or cursed, remains unclear. The quest for Saint Sabbat's tomb becomes entangled with the mystery of the Beati. Are they connected? Is the timing coincidence or providence? Gaunt does not know. But he knows the crusade needs a symbol, needs something to believe in, beyond endless grinding war. The search continues, unresolved, pulling him forward even as the campaigns pile up and the casualties mount. It gives his exhausted soul something beyond mere survival. A purpose that transcends tactics and body counts, the possibility that all this suffering might serve something greater than imperial conquest. Gaunt is older now. Past 50, ancient for an Imperial Guard officer. Most men in his position are either dead or promoted to desk positions far from the fighting. He is still here, still leading the ghosts, still carrying the weight of command like an iron yoke. The original Tanith survivors are few now. Corbec died heroically during the siege of Herodor. Bragg was killed on Ancrion Sextus. Caffren fell on Gereon. The list of names grows longer every year, and Gaunt remembers every single one. But the culture persists. New recruits learn the Tanith ways. They wear the camo cloaks. They learn to fight like ghosts, and they learn to follow Gaunt. Why? A young trooper asks him once. Fresh recruit, barely 18, assigned to the ghosts after his homeworld was liberated. Why do you do this? You could retire. Take a staff position. Stop fighting. Gaunt considers the question seriously, looks at the boy, because that is what he is, a boy, and sees his own younger self reflected back. Because Tanith burned, he says finally, and as long as I live, it will be remembered. Every victory we claim is written in its name. Every mission we complete honors the dead. I continue because they cannot. That is why. The boy nods, not fully understanding, but accepting it anyway. That is what it means to be one of Gaunt's ghosts. You follow a man who refuses to forget, who treats you like a person, not ammunition. Who will walk into hell beside you and carry you out if you fall? In an Imperium where human life is the cheapest resource, where soldiers are numbers in a ledger, where commissars execute for the crime of fear, Ibram Gaunt insists on something different. He insists on remembering names. He insists that sacrifice has meaning. He insists that even in the grinding horror of the 41st millennium, humanity, in its purest sense, is worth preserving. This philosophy should have gotten him killed decades ago, but the results speak for themselves. The ghosts are legendary now. Mentioned in strategic briefings across the Sabbat Worlds, requested for impossible missions, respected and feared in equal measure. But there is a cost that Gaunt pays alone. When you know your soldiers, names, when you have memorized their faces and their stories, every death becomes personal. Every casualty report is a knife to the heart. Every decision to send men into danger is a moral calculation that leaves scars. How many more names can he memorize? How many more funerals can he attend? How many more nights can he wake up seeing Tanith burn, seeing Caffren's body in the Gereon ruins, seeing Corbec fall, seeing all of them die while he survives? The answer, always, is one more time. One more battle, one more campaign, one more impossible mission. Because the ghosts need him. Because the quest for Saint Sabbat remains unfinished. Because Tanith deserves to be remembered. The briefing chamber on the strike cruiser is packed with officers from a dozen regiments. Maps flicker on the hololithic display showing the next target, Ancrion Sextus, a fortress world that has held against 3 previous assaults. The general conducting the briefing is efficient, clinical, pointing out defensive positions and casualty projections with detached professionalism. We need reconnaissance in force, the general says. Deep insertion into the outer defense ring. High casualties expected. We are looking for volunteers. The chamber is silent. No one meets the general's eyes. This is a suicide mission dressed in military jargon, and everyone knows it. Gaunt stands. His joints ache. His hands still tremble slightly when he is tired, a lasting gift from Gereon. He is 52 years old, ancient for an Imperial Guard officer still fighting on the front lines. The Tanith First-and-Only will take the mission, sir. The general nods, unsurprised. It is always the ghosts, always the impossible missions. Always Gaunt leading from the front when any sane commissar would stay safe in the rear. After the briefing, McColl approaches, still moving like a shadow despite the years. Sir, the men are ready, same as always. I know they are, Sergeant. That is what worries me. Sir? Gaunt gestures at the viewport, at the void between stars. We keep asking them to do the impossible, and they keep succeeding. One day our luck runs out. Maybe. McColl's expression does not change. But not today. Today we are ghosts. Today we are Tanith. Today we remember what was taken from us and make them pay for it. Gaunt nods slowly. McColl walks away to brief his scouts. Alone in the empty briefing chamber, Gaunt closes his eyes and, for just a moment, allows himself to remember. The knollwood forests of Tanith, silver bark gleaming in autumn light. The smell of the trees, sweet and clean, nothing like the sick, sweet smell of them burning. His father's commissar coat hanging in the Sculla dormitory, too big for a boy to wear, but someday he would grow into it. That world is gone. His father is gone. Corbeck is gone. Bragg, Catherine, Varl, thousands of others whose names he carries like stones in his chest. But the ghosts remain. And as long as they remain, Tanith is more than ashes in memory. It is a way of fighting, a way of moving through the darkness, a refusal to be forgotten that burns brighter than any funeral pyre. Gaunt opens his eyes, touches the hilt of his power sword, that familiar weight, that constant reminder. Outside the viewport, the target world grows larger. Ancreon Sextus, another fortress. Another impossible mission, another chance to prove that the ghosts are worth the legend. The transport will land in 4 hours. His men are checking their equipment, cleaning their weapons, speaking the quiet rituals that soldiers perform before battle. Some write letters that will reach no one. Others are simply sitting in silence, making their peace with the Emperor or fate or whatever gods the Imperium allows them to believe in. Gaunt will join them soon. Will walk among them as he always does, speaking their names, asking about their families, reminding them they are people, not ammunition. The drop bay smells of promethium and weapon oil. 300 men in worn camo cloaks, checking magazines, tightening straps, the familiar pre-battle rituals performed in near silence. McColl catches his eye from across the bay and nods once. Ron is briefing his squad, voice low and controlled. A young trooper, Mert, Gaunt remembers, recruited on Vervenhive, looks up as Gaunt passes and straightens slightly, trying to hide his fear. Gaunt rests a hand on the boy's shoulder for just a moment, says nothing. Sometimes that is enough. The Tanith First-and-Only, Gaunt's ghosts. The last sons of a burning world. They will fight as Tanith taught them. They will move like ghosts through impossible terrain. They will accomplish what other regiments cannot, because they refuse to fail, refuse to break, refuse to be anything less than the finest light infantry in the Imperial Guard. And Ibram Gaunt will lead them, as he has for decades, as he will until the day he dies or the war ends, whichever comes first. The war continues. The names accumulate, and somewhere in the grinding darkness of the 41st millennium, meaning persists. Not in grand victories or noble declarations, but in the quiet act of remembering, in the refusal to treat soldiers as numbers, in the insistence that even in hell humanity is worth preserving. This is what it means to be Gaunt's ghosts. This is what it means to endure,